Most players don't mess up the opening because they forgot some deep theory. They mess it up because they break these 5 simple rules. Say you're playing this game and white is going for the Vienna gambit, now it is black to move. Most players here, as black, actually go ahead and capture this pawn on f4, which is already wrong. And why is that a mistake? Because it gives up the center. And yes, there's this classical rule, control the center, or fight for the center, as I like to put it out. And here the idea is, now there's nothing that black has in the middle of the board, around these 4 squares. Now white controls it fully, they can start making use of it right away. Push the pawn forward, and since your knight controls these 2 squares, this black knight has to go all the way back to g8, and then it kind of looks like black tried to play chess, but it didn't quite work out. Another very common mistake for black would be to just defend the central pawn by developing their knight. And again, this seems like a perfectly reasonable move to play, but in reality that's almost a losing error, because now after white trades in the center of the board, they can now play pawn to d4 and just look at that situation. White has 2 pawns in the middle of the board, and they already start putting pressure on black. The knight has to go somewhere, and now these pawns can even keep coming forward, and again the knight has to retreat all the way back. And initially it may not seem like a big deal. I mean, black wasn't checkmated, they didn't lose any material, so what's the problem? Well, look at this position from this perspective. White has 2 pawns in the middle of the board, they already occupy 2 squares. They also control some additional squares in front of them, making it harder for black to move around, to develop their pieces normally. Plus, on top of that, these advanced pawns also open up files and diagonals for the rest of white's pieces standing behind them. And now, for instance, this bishop controls this diagonal, this bishop controls this diagonal. The queen also can control all these squares. And black, at the same time, is not controlling much at all, right? They're just dozing there. And white is controlling pretty much the entire board already, just within a couple moves. And that's why it is so critical to pay attention to these 4 squares in the middle of the board and to try to have your pawns there. Alright, now let's play it out. White continues his development. For black, it's not easy to do the same. Black cannot develop normally because of this pawn. Now, therefore, black is trying to challenge the pawn. And now, again, for many players, their initial impulse for white would be to just trade off. And that would violate that idea that you wish to keep your pawns in the middle of the board, right? You don't just want to trade them out for no reason, without getting any benefits. And for the OGs, yes, to take is a mistake. So here white goes bishop c4, just completing their development. If black is struggling to develop, good, so be it. Now black captures, white simply castles, and now again there is this tension. And while black is trying to spend all this time destroying white's pawn center, white already goes on the offense, and now hits this f7 pawn 3 times actually, and black is already defenseless because they cannot defend this pawn 3 times with just 1 move, right? And if they decide to bite the bullet and just capture this knight on c3, then white keeps the attack going, bishop takes f7, checks the king has to come out, now rook to e1, continues the attack. Notice this queen controlling all these squares, the king has to go there, and now I could actually capture the queen, but ironically that's not even the strongest move because queen f3 is even more straightforward and leading to these cozy checkmate. Sometimes you're trying to play chess, but your opponent does something totally weird. For whatever reason. Maybe their sibling played it against them and destroyed them 5 years ago, and now they want their moment of glory. Whatever the case might be, they're playing some weird stuff. What do you do then? Well, we know this first rule, fight for the center, which means that you want to establish your control over these 4 squares. And in a nutshell, you want your pawns to be there, you do not want your opponent's pawns to be there. Now, in the current game, black played pawn e6. Wrong, because this pawn belongs to this square. Right now you have this 1 pawn in the middle of the board, great, you want to have as much as you can around these 4 squares, therefore e5 would be much better. Ideally speaking, you'd love to have 2 pawns in the center. If you can't, at least get 1. That is still much better, because now you have this pawn, it controls some squares, your opponent has nothing, that's already really great for you. Moving on to the next common scenario. Again, you're trying to play normal chess to develop your pieces in an opening, but your opponent becomes ultra aggressive. In this case, he is shamelessly trying to put together this scholar's mate. You feel annoyed and you want to fight back, you want to punish your opponent for this, therefore you play queen f3, guarding your pawn and also counter-attacking your opponent. But he keeps playing some weird moves, this time just giving up this pawn, you think, okay, I'm gonna take it, and you renew the threat of queen to f7. Now black goes knight to h6, which hits your queen and also simultaneously covers his weakness. Now this time your queen has to move, but now rook to f8 hits the queen once again, and guess what? Strangely enough, black is winning. I mean, life is unfair, right? You were playing by the rules. He was doing something weird. How come black's winning? But now your queen is attacked. It has to come back somewhere such that it still stops that scholar's mate. But now black also has their rook into the attack, which is a big issue. The queen has to move somewhere. Now they sacrifice the rook with a discover check, forcing your king to move, and they still end up with that same scholar's checkmate. Again, this feels unfair. You were playing by the rules. Your opponent pulled off some cheap opening trick. Now, let's go back and see how white should have handled this. Here is a much better approach. I call it the develop first principle. It means that in an opening, you've heard this many times that you need to develop your minor pieces, your knights and bishops. But we often forget about this because we got carried away by something else. Such as in this case, we think, oh, we need to guard these themes, or we want to play here and counterattack. Right? And we start deviating from the main theme. And that is where these principles really handy. Develop first means you put this as a priority. And you keep this in mind that your task in an opening is to develop your knights and bishops first. And you keep focus on that. And therefore you ask yourself this question. Can I develop my knights and bishops here somehow? Sure, we don't want to blunder this checkmate, but nevertheless, our priority and the question you got to ask yourself is, can I develop somehow? For instance, in this case, white can play d4, which will simultaneously open up this bishop, support your development, and also lock this diagonal for the bishop. Therefore, we also stop this checkmate in threat. And that would be a much better move for white to play. And even after white has played queen to f3 and black continued with pawn to f5, hitting this pawn e4, again, yes, we don't want to blunder this pawn, but can you develop and protect this pawn simultaneously? Like, yeah, you can play knight to c3, a very standard opening move, and at the same time we also protect this pawn. So this is the develop first principle in action. By the way, if you want to understand openings without memorizing endless lines, I explain these key ideas in my free masterclass, the link is down below. The next third rule is a real game changer. Stick with me for a few minutes and you will see how to easily level up and outsmart so many of your current opponents. Alright, here's what happens. Sometimes you're looking at a game of one of the top players, maybe Carlsen or maybe somebody from the past. In this case, we're looking at the game of Alhain, the 4th world champion. And you see that those players, and of course, somebody like Tal or Morphy, has been ultra aggressive. They were playing in this very sharp attacking style, putting pressure on their opponents, making threats. And after all, if a goal of a chess game is to checkmate your opponent's king, then shouldn't you really try to do that? Shouldn't you try to attack, right? And in this case, white is attacking with pretty much every move he plays, like he's trying to counter-strike, but white just ignores it, leaving this pawn on b2 hanging, black captures it, probably thinking that he's winning now because it double attacks the rook and the knight, but instead of defending either of them, white just sacrificed the knight in another way, and also the rook is still hanging right here on a1. What is white even doing here? The idea, if black captures, white will recapture with this bishop check and keep attacking. That is bad for black. Now the rook will come and also keep joining the attack. That's clearly bad. But how about black captures the rook with a check? And this is what he did in the game. White played king to f2 and sacrificed another rook. Don't try this at home. And then continued with this attack, king to d8, queen d2, such a beautiful game, right? These are all the examples that we admire, and this is how it looks like strong players get it done, so quickly and so impressively. Now, knight to e6 checkmate is coming, and knight to d7 does not help because after bishop e6, black is defenseless against this checkmate. Now, here's what happens next. We get inspired by these great players, and we try doing something similar. In this position, it was white to play, and white played bishop f4, putting pressure on black, attacking the knight, black traded off knights, and then the queen is still under the attack. Black moved it forward, but now white kicks it off, it falls back, white attacks once again, the queen has to retreat, bishop a3, one more attacking move, we keep gaining temples, attacking the queen, now white snatches the pawn and also opens up black's king, however it also blunders this knight, and suddenly white got checkmated. Let's try to comprehend what was wrong with this game. Now, at first, it may seem fairly obvious. Okay, white blundered the knight right here at this point, right? White captured the pawn and blundered this knight on c3. By the way, I'm pretty sure a lot of players would also play b5 or bishop b5 and would also blunder the knight, just in some other way. And even though it is true, it is not the real issue. Here's the thing, like the real rule, and this is what will allow you to level up. Everyone knows the rule that you gotta develop your pieces in an opening. But strong players, grandmasters, know that it's even better to develop with threats. And here's the key difference. Strong players attack while developing, Weak players attack instead of developing. Now we're moving on to the rule number 4, and let's explore this position of the Evans Gambit. White is attacking in the center, black captures, white cannot recapture because the pawn is currently pinned. Therefore, instead, white castles, black is trying to develop and potentially castle, but white plays bishop a3, a pretty smart move, cutting off the king, making it harder for black to castle. Plus, we have some tension right here in the middle of the board. Now, how would you play here as black? Now, in such positions, very often people capture here on c3 because they see that, okay, there is this tension, the pawn is hanging, it makes sense to take here, right? Wrong, because there is another rule. It says castle before you get greedy. And pawn takes c3 would actually be quite a significant mistake for black, potentially a losing mistake, because now I can begin attacking with e5, attacking this knight, maybe queen b3, putting up a battery against this pawn on f7. Black still cannot castle because of this bishop from a3, and black's position becomes critical. Now, in the actual game, black instead decided to consolidate the position and move the bishop back to b6, but it didn't help because of the same move queen to b3, hitting this pawn f7 because of the other bishop. Black cannot castle, they cannot cross the attacked square f8, and they had tried to block the diagonal that way, but now pawn takes d5 hits the knight moves with a counterattack, but I forgot to mention that it was Morphy's game. He plays rook to e1, putting the king to check. Now bishop e6, black was hoping that the attack of white's queen on b3 would give black a tempo, but Morphy just sacrificed the queen and then went on this all-out attack. The king now has to run, bishop e6, but this morning run is not very healthy for the king, unfortunately, and after a couple more checks, Morphy finished it off with this beautiful double checkmate. Coming back to this critical opening position, people usually do not castle early enough because they see something else that seems more attractive or more urgent to deal with, such as this tension in the middle, and therefore they postpone castling. And that is why the rule says castle before you get greedy, before you get that shiny object syndrome and you try to pursue something else. Now, most of the time, in the vast majority of the openings, you should aim to castle within the first 10 moves. And here it is the 8th move already. Therefore, if black cannot castle right away because of this bishop, black should play d6 and then castle as quickly as possible, and again within the first 10 moves if possible. And the 5th rule is so powerful it can override everything else, literally all the other rules combined. Now let me show you an example. Here black played knight to e7, white castle, black played pawn f5, attacking the central pawn on e4, white decided to trade, however, blundered this knight on f3. Alright, the game goes on, white goes knight to d2. Now, by the way, black is up a piece. Normally, black is expected to win here. Bishop g4, hitting the pawn, white moved the knight forward, and black thought, okay, the pawn is still hanging, let me just go ahead and capture it. And this time, it is black who blundered this fork with a knight. Things have changed again. King moves, white grabs the rook, black recaptures, bishop takes f7. Now white is happy, he also got an extra pawn, and he's attacking the knight. The knight comes here to f6. Now white is thinking, okay, what am I going to do here? And he sees that he can put his rook on this e-file and attack the pawn. Sounds good, right? Wrong, because before you think about your moves, you got to ask yourself, what does he want? And this simple rule allows you to prevent all the blunders. You cannot possibly know all the opening theory and all the opening traps, but this simple rule alone will prevent majority of your blunders. So here white did play rook to e1, completely overlooking the fact that this pawn was hanging and this is what black was going to play. And now with this rook on e1, it makes it even better for black, because now after bishop takes d3, not only black grabs the rook and hits the rook, but now this rook also has no way out. It is trapped, meaning on the next turn, black will grab this rook, and now black is, once again, after all these crazy tactical complications, again black is up a piece. Again, black should, potentially win this game. He plays knight to g4 with a double attack and finally blunder this checkmate. Let me show you another very common and quite smart opening trap arising from this Scotch gambit, where both sides seem to be playing fairly normal opening moves, and yet black failed into this opening trap. Bishop takes f7, now followed by knight to g5 check. And here, guess which move players play most of the time? It is king to g8. Which blunders not one, but actually two checkmates. And here's the thing. It is clear that nobody can know all opening traps. That is not an issue. But before playing your move, you could potentially ask yourself, what can my opponent play? What is he trying to put together? And here, it's got queen to d5 and queen to b3, both with the same idea of hitting the queen from this angle, which means the king to g8 move being a decisive blunder, a pretty big blunder, that just loses the game on the spot. Now, if you want to understand how to play chess openings instead of memorizing lines, or in case you forgot opening lines, I explain that step by step in my free masterclass, the link is down below. And if you want to learn this Scotch Gambit, which is actually a great opening to play, which is solid but also contains a lot of traps, check it out right here.